afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me thank each and every one of you for coming out here this afternoon. This is our second Let's Talk forum, actually. And for those who were, I'm not sure if anybody is here for the first time. Okay. Well, for those who are here for the first time, now the Let's Talk Forum is a platform for communication and civic engagement between important policy stakeholders, representatives from civil society, community leaders, members from the academia, and young Guyanese. She's actually working with the Chamber to develop an entrepreneurship program for youth, women, young Guyanese, minority groups, and so forth. Now, she's actually here this afternoon to share her experience and to provide us with some feedback on the recently held UN Youth Consultation Forum. She was there and she made some observations which she would like to share, as well as hopefully she will leave with us this afternoon some words of inspiration so that we will continue to do the good work that we're currently involved in. Now, without any further ado, I'd like to hand you over to Ms. Pamela Grant.
As Marissa said earlier, I will, through the course of the evening, share some of my observations and my musings and my wishes as a diasporic Guyanese. And I say this very honestly, I feel I'm one of those that feels that I was torn from here when I was 6. My parents, I think, quite importantly, as much as we could or they could afford, I came back. I was lucky to come back quite frequently over my childhood and into my late teens. And I always pictured myself, I've told people, hi Vishnu, I think I said this to you last week, that it's up until recently, I would have dreams and I would be here in Guyana, even though I don't really have a lived experience for past being 6 or when I came at 17 or 14 or that. And it's one of the things actually that I found over the years working with young people. It doesn't matter which part of the world that I've done it. I've done that in Jamaica, I've done a little bit in England, Barbados and Trinidad, Kenya, and of course in Toronto where I live. A young person, a human being, needs to have a really strong sense of who they are, not just in their own entity and own presence, but their history. What's my background? What's my heritage? Without that, the young people that I've worked with in all those places I've mentioned across the world have been deemed to be disenfranchised, disadvantaged, at risk. But I've found that in talking with them, whether I'm sitting in a penitentiary or a youth home, that one of the things that they always say to me is, well, I never got told what to do or how to do it. I could go and do whatever I pleased. I don't know what my background is. My parents, especially in the diaspora, my parents tell me that I need to be Canadian. They don't tell me a lot about Guyana or Jamaica or whatever the country is, and they want me to be Canadian, but at the same time they say, but you must behave this way. And it's one of the things that I find caused me, because I lived that experience, my parents did a little bit of that, caused me to always seem to be looking for, searching for my self-esteem. I tell people, the person that you see here, I'm 58 years old. The person that you see here at 58 years old found her voice probably at 45, which is pretty late, which is in no way, which is why I want us to sit in a circle, because I can learn from you, because each of you are at least half my age, if not more, and I picked up, you already have a sense of who you are, you know what you want, and you're articulate about it. At your age, I wasn't. And there are a lot of young people who are similar. And, you know, as we talk this evening, I think the notion of what you can do individually, what I can do individually, what we can do as a group to support other young people who are not as haven't reached the level of consciousness or self-expression as you have. I mean, 3 of you said, I do this, and I do this, and Marissa can't even list all the things that she's into. And I think we need to know that that's actually unique. It's something that needs to be honored. It's something that needs to be embraced. And it's not something that you take for granted. It's not something that you can judge others who don't have it, because there's some elements that in there that need to be in place. And it's important to take some time to reflect on what those pieces are. And when you think individually about your circumstances, what it is, or what the key factors were that caused you to be where you are today and how you got here. And I'm sure that if we went around the room and did a little bit of that discussion, there would be some key pieces. There would be, at some point, someplace, whether it's a parent or a family member, some adult ally or two who encouraged you, who supported you, who didn't poo-poo like everybody else the ideas that you might have come up with. One. Everybody can find one. I can think of one myself, and it's not the obvious. And I had both my parents happily married. They celebrated their 59th wedding anniversary last Sunday. But there's usually a need to have a connect with an adult ally or an institution. It might be an institution, it might be an organization that you belong to that does that. And so BlueCAPS is kind of cool, what I know of it. I like the vim and vigor of it, the vitality, the way in which it appears from what I've read and in speaking with some of the members of BlueCAPS that I see around the room. A can-do attitude. So there are 4 pillars that I have learned over the years through experience that I was able to give voice to in 2006. 4 pillars. So it took me that long. In 2006, when was that? How old was I? I wasn't your age. Again, I was I had gray hair already. And those 4 pillars, to get anything done, to achieve anything, that whatever it is that you're trying to do needs to be collaborative. I cannot emphasize that enough. There is absolutely no business person, no successful person on this planet that got where they got to or have achieved what they've achieved on their own, with their idea that they didn't share with anybody else and kept close to their chests. 2, that whatever you try to do should actually attempt to change systems. It shouldn't try to be something that fits in or that somebody's done before that you saw on the internet, or the guy next door started to do it, so I'm going to do it too. Make a new path. Right? And it's collectively, right? It's collectively. And what I'll do over the course of this time, you're hanging on to that document there, and there's a similar one that's over on the table. And those are annual reports from an organization that I could say was my idea, but I wouldn't. It happened because it was called the Youth Challenge Fund. It is still called the Youth Challenge Fund, but it came out of collaboration. It came out of, I call it indigenous, something indigenous. I didn't import, I didn't replicate, it wasn't replicated from somewhere else. It was something that when people got together to speak about an issue, which at the time was young African diasporic men in Toronto's high crime, high poverty, low employment, communities, they were shooting each other. There were, one summer, 53 shootings, the summer of 2005. So that was a factor over here. The government, as always, doesn't step into a situation like that. They have to be pushed into. They had to have the community rise up and say, you have to do something about it. And it came from people, yes, like myself, but it wasn't a lone voice. It was a chorus. And I like to think of choruses. The thing about a chorus, think about it, everybody doesn't have the same voice. Everybody doesn't sing at the same time. Sometimes you have solos. You have altos, sopranos, mezzo-sopranos. So that means that you can have that collaboration that you're talking about. The sound that comes when a bunch of different people in their own way are saying something needs to be done. We're not all at the same rally because we all don't have to be at a rally. We're not all writing the policy paper because we all don't need to do that. We need to have a couple of each, right, to come with that movement, that advocacy that I heard our friend talk about, so that governments can't ignore when it isn't the same old coming. It's a bunch of people. There's a movement afoot. So I've mentioned 3 of the pillars, right? Collaboration, systemic transforming systems, and being Indigenous, coming out of something that's authentic and real and meaningful and relevant to our circumstance. And then the final one, which is absolutely the most important, but it's also the easiest, and that is, if we're talking about youth employment, then whatever it is must be led by youth. It must be, youth must be at the center. They must drive it. I can't make a decision or determine, determine what's in the best interest of a young person who lives every day with gun violence and wants to move from that, wants to support his or her community to move from that. Thank you. So those are the 4 important pillars. And if you can transcribe that, translate it into everything that you do. And the 2 most difficult of those are the collaboration and transforming systems. So I will speak as we continue the conversation this evening about some of the ways in which I was able actually to achieve that in a couple of different situations. But I'm going to suffice it to say that time is the most important element, time and patience. And that is not to sound passive in any way. One can be quite aggressive and quite forward-moving by planning through, understanding that processes, experiences are not linear, they're iterative, and that we have to build into whatever it is that we're planning, whether it's a business we want to open or an organization that we want to start or a wrong that we want to right. We want to do something in Alboystown and we want to clean it up, make sure that the coker doesn't blow again the next time it floods. There needs to be a plan, and it has to be a collaborative effort. And one of the things that I always say, and I was taught it by one of the young people that I work with, and what he said to me is, Pam, if you're not at the table, then you can rest assured that you'll be on the menu. So, so be there, be present in any way you can. And if you can't, to give that hand up to that someone who is, not the pull down, not the crab in the barrel, not the criticism. Because as I said earlier, and I'm going to keep speaking in circles and repetitions, 3 times for each thing. Test me. The importance of the chorus and the voices as opposed to It's my idea, it's my thing, I'm doing it, I'm the only one, oh my gosh. Oh, no one else cares as much as I do. The reality is there is only one you, right? But there are tens of thousands of others, each of whom can play a role in your chorus, in your orchestra. And sometimes, as I said earlier, for those of you who weren't here, that choruses, you don't always hear all the voices all the time. Everybody has a different role. And there are times when just the male voices sing, just the bass sing, just the soprano sing, or there's a solo. And if you kind of look at life that way in terms of what you're doing, then it's no biggie if Clinton at some point is the one who's speaking, right? And you're the one who's in the back writing the notes, and somebody else is the one leading a rally out there, and somebody else is doing the childcare for, there are roles that have to be in play. So if we're talking about business now, so let's do a flip switch and say, I'm interested in starting a business. And I have this brilliant idea. And my only problem is, I can't tell you how many times I've heard this. My only problem is I don't have the capital, right? All I need is the money. And I'm good to go because it's my idea and I can move ahead. I don't need anybody else. I don't think anybody has been successful like that. There is no entrepreneur, no successful anybody that's done it all on their own, or done it because they had money. The initiative that I mentioned that's documented in that document, and would you mind reaching behind you and pulling the other one in? And I'll just let you pass it around. It should say Youth Challenge Fund report to the community. Report to the community. Yeah, that one. So you can flip through. There's lots of room here. Okay, sure.
I don't block you.
Okay. So the notion of having an idea without the burden of having to think of money was how that started, because we actually were able to lobby government to make an initial down payment of $15 million. It was put in a fund. So the young people that were engaged to do something about the poverty, the violence, the lack of education in the communities that were experiencing the violence, only had to worry about coming up with the idea and delivering on something. Guess what? It was hard. Didn't happen. Because the systemic leaders like the schools and the police and the law folk and the people who ran the libraries, who had community centers and ran the space, wouldn't let them in the door. So they had money, and they had an idea, but there was no collaboration. There was no skin in the game for those within the system who needed to change, who needed to make room. And in fact, there was a whole effort in the first 2 years for them to lock arms and say, no, not letting you in. You're black. You're gay. You're a dropout. You're, all of the negative in that notion, the notion of young people who just didn't follow the rules and therefore deserve to be in the situation that they're in. There was a lot of judgment. There were calls to the government to take the money back and not to trust young people because they couldn't possibly start an initiative or an enterprise or build a space. Fast forward it to now, there are 111 initiatives across the city of Toronto. There's a document there that is the equivalent of the provincial government's youth policy that was, in essence, developed and written by the leaders that were created out of those 111 initiatives. The chair, that is an order in council appointment to advise the premier on youth issues, is a young man called Lee Can, who was in prison at the beginning of the process. Lee Can learned very fast what he had to do in terms of engaging with the very educators who had kicked him out of school, engaging with the Crown attorneys that threw him into prison, engaging with other young people to pull together an idea that he had. It was his idea, yeah, it was his idea. But he had to work with other young people, with adult and institutional allies, and had to change his outlook on life. That everybody was against him, to, if I'm persistent, I will gain allies. And it will become not I, but we, not me, we. And I'm going to network. So networking is a big thing. What does networking mean to you? If I say networking, what does it mean to you, John?
I think for me, it's gathering strengths to synergize one effort.
Okay.
Just a dictionary definition.
Vishnu, what does networking mean to you?
I just want to catch everybody.
Oh, okay. Or anybody. I've picked on Vishnu, but you know.
I think making connections, becoming part of other groups, and sharing the information that you have and getting to learn more from other portions as well is the only way to grow. Not as dictionary.
Anybody else want to give when you think of networking, what do you think of?
It's basically putting together right elements to achieve the overall goal, one overall goal.
When you say, I'm just gonna push you a little bit. So when you say right elements, what are some of the elements that you think of in terms of being right?
Okay, you say if I want to start a business,
Mm-hmm.
I have to get funding. No, for example, let go smaller. I want to be in part of a study group.
Okay.
I can have a talkative person with me who always, do me on the phone, distractive. I have to have the right people in the group so we can all pass the exam at the day, put in the right amount of time.
That's
Yeah.
actually a good example. Okay, I like that. Anybody else? Okay, networking's a big thing. It's and I find that it gets bandied around quite a bit, but it really is the front end of collaboration, right? You can't collaborate with somebody that you don't know, trust, and haven't engaged with in any way. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to sign an MOA with you and make sure that you do this so that I can have this happen. There's that time element that comes into it. It's sometimes spending time with someone, talking about or experiencing something that has absolutely nothing to do with what you ultimately believe you want. But it also is something that might help to change and tweak a little bit the idea that you think you have. Having conversations with someone, seeking other opinions and other ideas, and continuing to hone what is your idea. I think I'm more so than any place else, there seems to be an issue here around branding, intellectual property rights and legislation or the lack thereof. And I'm hearing people tell me that that's one of the reasons why they aren't proceeding with whatever idea it is or concept that they want to get going. So I want to hear from some of you, some of your experiences on that particular issue, because then I'm gonna try and have us kind of group
Moving
problem
things forward.
solved. Yeah.
Just give me a mic really quick. I just want to make one comment and ask you one.
Okay.
For me in Guyana, I remain forever an optimist. Because for me, leadership is easy. And anyone, and we talk about it through adaptive leadership. Leadership is easy and it can be demonstrated by anyone. And I know I say it so much it almost sounds cliche, but I'll say it again. Those who are willing to put in the work to get something done will be the ones who will succeed. I listened to the 4 pillars you outlined, fantastic pillars, but I think the biggest challenge is how do we get young people, not just in Guyana, but internationally, how do we get them motivated? How do we get them to develop the passion, the will to sustain efforts and to put in the work to see their group, their organization, or their initiative succeed? What you find happening, lots of people jump into an initiative or an idea. In the first few moments, initial stages, there's high enthusiasm, but to sustain that, that's the biggest issue I see. And the folks who can sustain it the longest, getting things done, and trying to work the hardest. I always tell people, you find a successful one, he or she works harder than everybody else. And that's all leadership takes. How do we get our young people to buy into that concept that it's, look, I joined this thing, I started this thing, this is my initiative as an entrepreneur. Even entrepreneurship, I gotta see through. How you get them to put in the work?
It's an interesting thing. One of the things I've been trying to do tonight is to take it away from them and us and turn it into we. To take it away from me to we. It sounds very jargonistic, but there's absolutely, you're not going to get anywhere. We're not going to get anywhere if there's always that sense of them and us. How can we get them to do this? It's not. It's us. It's part of the chorus, right? So what is it about, if we stick to that analogy of a chorus, what is it? There's buy-in. People want to be part of the chorus, right? You're talking about sustaining that. The answer, there's no silver bullet, but the experience that actually is reflected in those 2 documents that are passing around is that those young people were considered to be them. The disenfranchised, the disengaged, the uneducated, the disinterested, think of all that. And what it took was others, peers, as well as adult and institutional allies that went to them, didn't set up scenarios and said, come and participate. This is something that's really good for you. We did a survey last year and the survey said, this is what you want, so here we made it for you. Come and eat it. It was very much going to where they were, whether that was, and I'm telling you personally, whether that was 11:30 at night on a corner in the dark where I know what they're doing in terms of trading drugs, but I would go and engage. I would have a conversation and I would say, I'm serious. I'm here for you. However long it takes you to express to me what it is that you want and how you want. Most importantly, not what, how, what it will take. You have issues around a family that you have to take care of. You're unemployed and you need money, so this is why I'm here catching you doing that. So, drugs, right? And it was being there every single Friday. If I said I was going to be there next Friday, I was there next Friday. So the adult allies, the people, like if you want to put yourself in that position, Clinton, as a peer or as an adult ally, it's being there for them on their terms, in their space, on their turf, every single time. And then what you find is it gets to a point, and sometimes there's a little bit of a tussle. They'll say to you, okay, thanks. This is what I want to do. This is how I want to do it. Thank you for your mentorship. Thank you for your guidance. Thank you for being there. But I am now going to do it on my own. And what we found with the Youth Challenge Fund, it was the adult and institutional allies that rotated in and out of the relationships. The youth who were able to sit down and write what their plan was to build a space, to start a basketball team that turned into a cultural group that turned into an enterprise, or an arts group that just wanted to perform, but then found an element around mental health, that they all had mental health issues. And so they now are money-making, they're in there, the elevated grounds. So they actually go to schools all across Canada and put on skits and then workshop mental health issues. They support boards of education, they get paid for it now. But they started out in a situation where everyone said, oh, there's too much shows and arts and so on. You should be, the adults said, you guys should be doing this. And they said, no, this is not what we want to do. And they had an adult ally that they called their elder. He happens actually to be Guyanese. Actually, a lot of the young people that I work with, which is a pretty sad story given our population and our representation as a percentage of the newcomer population in Toronto, that a lot of the a disproportionate number of disenfranchised youth are of Guyanese heritage. So, having said that, the elder that they worked with through the course of what was 6-7 years, and every single one of the young people that started at the beginning of those 7 years is still there today with that elder, and they have just, as they say, they've blown up. They make money. They are an enterprise. People talk about them. They're the head of psychiatry for the largest mental health hospital in Canada, promotes them, introduces them, speaks about them. And they've all been able, the trick, the answer is, we need to build the environment where we can incubate that iterative process, where there can be discoveries, I don't say mistakes made, where there can be discoveries made, and that we don't set out a linear plan that says in 3 years you have to move from point A to point B, and if you don't, you failed, which is what we do. We do it. We don't say, here's a space, physical or mental. Go ahead, let me know if you need help, and if you don't, here's your space. Do it. They don't just hang out on the couches, they actually come up with stuff. As I said, 111 different things that they came up with. 21 of them are income generating organizations that are incorporated. So, and all we did was time. So remember I said earlier, time and space to have it happen, and not to be so planned that you won't allow for the discoveries that inevitably happen when you have human beings exercising their human beingness, right? So it's hard to do, but there is now in Ontario, and it's replicated, not replicated, you'll see it referred to in the youth policy over there. There's the Youth Challenge Fund approach, which focuses on those 4 principles and pillars and really gives time and space for young people. And if, it could be a seniors group, you can switch the constituency, it doesn't matter, you can switch it, and allow that constituency to determine what makes sense for it at any given time. And as I said, there are 111 different initiatives. Not one of them did we say, okay, well, so-and-so over here is doing well, why don't you do that? Didn't do that. When people said, how come so-and-so looks like they're doing really well over there and these guys over here are struggling? Take the money back. They're not interested. So it's a total switch in terms of how we do things, because we like to business manage and make it all nice and tight, particularly if we're getting dollars from somebody else to do it. We don't tell those other people, which is the other part of the thing that I just want to talk about, and then I'm going to shut up for a bit. We raised a total of $2 million. That was done with less than 30 donors. That's not easy to do, because those donors were not, those donors already give to the largest fundraising machine in our country, which is the Toronto United Way of Toronto. And we actually got the same people who every year give millions of dollars to that cause to give more just to the Youth Challenge Fund. We didn't give them a product. We didn't say, oh, well, they're all going to try and they're going to do this, and by the end of it, they'll all have their shoes laced up nicely, pants pulled up and neat and squeaky clean. We said, this is messy. You're going to be on the leading edge of something that's new, and we're looking for you to put your money into the fund and trust the young people that you just met, because that's what we did. We brought donors together with the young people so that the young people could express for themselves. I didn't say anything. There are videos, you can go online, I'll tell you where to find them. You will not see me in those videos. I think there's one or two clips where I say nothing, because it's about the young people having that voice. So I've just spoken more than I have spoken in a long time. So I'm going to stop now and ask if there are any questions.
One second before somebody else. You spoke of the two pillars, and I'm thinking about some ambivalencies. I like the randomness. I like the disruptors and the innovators. You said one of the pillars is try to be unique. Love those kind of people. But how do you bring that together or reconcile that with collective? You said go out for the collaborative collective action approach, which I'm a big fan of too. But sometimes when you or your organization, and I'm trying also to think your pillars in an entrepreneurial sense, because part of your discussions you open with entrepreneurship. How do you maintain that same spirit, that same approach when you join an organization or a much larger group, and if that larger group is more on the conservative, safe side, especially in a society like this. In this society, the more random you can be. I like to use and talk about Saul Alinsky, who's this big community organizer, how to disrupt systems and stuff like that. In Guyana, if you come with some of those cutting-edge disruptive approaches, you got private sector, you want nothing to do with you to fold up. You got civil society groups who say, we don't want nothing to do with that group or he. We'll stay away. And if you join us or you come with us, you just end up in a sea, or you just start to flow in a stream as everybody else, and you lose that uniqueness, that identity that you once had individually. So I don't know how do you reconcile the two?
I'm not saying that doesn't happen in Canada, right? It happens everywhere. I think it's human nature. Sometimes I think Guyanese are really tough on themselves. You're really not that unique, honestly. You're really not that bad. But there seems to be a psyche here where we kind of beat up on ourselves. I don't get it. The answer to your question, though, Clinton, it's about we can speak in generalities and we can speak about other people's experiences and even our own, but there has to be that degree of chutzpah, I guess, where you try again, because you will find that individual. We found those less than 30 donors, one of which gave $5 million, which is the most any single donor has given to the United Way, that raises like $120 million a year, right? $5 million like that to a bunch of black kids to do what they wanted. Unheard of. Why did that happen? Because we connected people. We keep talking. You build trust. You have to keep trying. You can't give up and go, oh, which is here. I'm going to tell you. The term and the phrase that I've heard in Guyana more than anything else is that can't work here. That can't work here.
And that's why it works.
Right? So I shrug and I look at you and I say, yeah, you You've got to try. Like, it's not going to come like manna from heaven. It's not. You got to work for it, which is what you're saying. But you even have to work to build the relationships that seem like, I guess the old folks would say, or the Brits or the colonials would say, unlikely bedfellows, right? But that's what you have to do. If I'm saying to you that young people in situations where they would have no reason to say, we're going to build a safe space for ourselves in the school system, the Catholic school system, that kicked us out and wasn't good to us. And I'll tell you that there is an initiative in a Catholic school. They built it. You can go online and you can see they've dug the hole. It's happening. What did it take those young people to go back into a scenario where they were abused, for lack of a better way of putting it, and to sit at that table with the director of education for the Catholic separate school board and say, we're going to work collaboratively and we're going to build a space in Monsignor Fraser at Midland and Finch in the middle of the turf war zone, and you're going to let us. And it didn't matter initially that they had money to put into building it because the Catholic school board wouldn't have it. But it took 3.5 years of meeting anyway, even though the general thing was, it's never going to happen. Oh, they don't like us. They're racist. They're prejudiced. They're everything else. That's all I can tell you. Just keep pushing. We are the children of Sisyphus. Just keep pushing the boulder up. Eventually, you'll get to the top. There's no magic to it. There's not a formula. It's about human engagement and not being afraid of that and building trusting relationships or strategic partnerships. So you don't trust the person, but you trust that if you don't watch yourself, he'll screw you over, right? And you sign the contract anyway, and you go in with your head well screwed on. You don't cut your nose off to spite your face and say, well, I'm not doing anything with him, if he's standing right there in the middle of gatekeeping a place that you want to be. It's really, it's just that. So don't have any, it's not magic. It's just hard work. It's not magic.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what, or discuss before what Clinton said. I think generally in life and in any situation, you might be at one end of the spectrum, and then there's the whole spectrum of people that you have to deal with. So yes, you might be a go-getter, you might be the kind of person that wakes up at 8 a.m. and gets things going, but
That's not early enough, by the way.
I don't wake up at 8 a.m. I wake up much later.
It's too late.
But I wake up much later than that because I'm up at 5, or I'm going in at 5. So there are many different people in the world doing many different things, and I think even though you have your unique way, you have to understand at some point in time you're dealing with
Other people.
very different people who are coming from very different circumstances, who have very different perspectives. Vishnu is from wherever he's from. He grew up in whatever kind of home. He has his own unique perspective that I could never have, because he has that because of how his life experiences. So everything that he is today is the sum of that, and then he chose to do with it. Same thing with me. But in relation to working with people, I think one of the things we discussed earlier was the people that encouraging people to come out and do stuff and so on. I think we have a culture generally in the country that where people are kind of laid back. For example, joining institutions like BlueCAPS and all the other youth organizations out there, they are members, yes, but they really don't have a lot of members if you think about it. Considering the youth population in Guyana,
You might have a lot of members, but
I don't think so.
the active ones.
But that's another part of it. Parents generally don't encourage their children, hey, join this organization, do something like. A lot of youths grow up without any kind of guidance whatsoever. So you really do need that youth or that adult ally that you're talking about. I can find one, and I got some fantastic advice, one-line advice, pieces of advice that just happened by the way, that changed my whole perspective, that made me look at life completely differently. Somebody shared a book with me once, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, changed my entire life. Shared Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, changed my entire life. And these things just happened by chance. We're just having a discussion and hey, this is a good book, whatever it is, or we're discussing a situation. So you do need that adult ally, and I think maybe adults who are in that position where they have the capacity to influence need to understand that and maybe try to do that a little more. I believe we do have to try to pull people out and pull them up. I don't think they have that drive right now, but we have the culture right now where everybody's going to get up and say, hey, we got a rally tomorrow,
No.
10,000 people show up. No,
That's not going to happen.
friends of the people involved maybe will show, but that's it.
Yeah. And that's true. Again, I hate to say this. I hate to disappoint you. It happens everywhere. You could be standing in any city or any town in the world and say that, and it would be true. And I think it's with the understanding that that is absolutely true, that those who do have the drive, this is why I talk about a chorus, right? I say, everybody doesn't sing at the same time. Everybody doesn't go to the same rally. There are different roles that people play in what you want to call your broad umbrella, the tent, under which you want people to be, or in your chorus. And the expectation that we will all be lockstep at the very same time, in the very same way, like we're doing mass games or something, that's the problem, right? We need people who are going to be gregarious. We need people who are going to be quiet and thoughtful and cautious and devil's advocates and saying, that can't work. You need a few. You don't need everybody saying that. You need somebody to always go, yes, but. And you need other people to say, yes, and. And it's about associating yourself very strategically with every single kind of person that you possibly can in order to get where you need to, because at every point along the way, there's some critical points in your journey. You're going to have to engage with each and every one of those different kinds of people. So if you only surround yourself with the yes people, oh yeah, we can do it, yeah, let's get up at 6, all of us, and let's all go on the bus and let's all do that. You're going to still get to the border where the other guys are there going, no, you can't pass. And because you spent no time engaging them, getting to know them, sussing them out, whatever you want to use, whatever term you want to use, then your journey is that much more hampered. But hopefully you'll learn from that and keep going. And then that's the thing. It's about keeping going. And keeping going doesn't necessarily mean it's the same people. You know what a relay race is like? Right? If life is a relay, while I have the baton, I'll do what I have to do, and I'm passing it on, and I can stay and I can watch and make sure that I cheer on the next runner, walker, worker.
If I may, because I'm a professional volunteer, I see Marissa looking that I'm already late for the next event that I'm supposed to be networking at. But for me, it's very important to also realize last week we had a session about the underachievement, and sometimes trying to push everyone to be a high achiever. I know the amount of stress it takes. I mean, staying up until 5 to get your work done, and then some people starting at 5 to get their stuff done. The amount of hard work that a lot of people, and when I look around the room, I see a lot of high achievers who put in a lot of work. So no one who sits around here really gets it like that. Sometimes people don't see that far. We just see the image and we think, oh, it's success. It's a lot of hard work that is behind success. But everyone has their place, and I strongly believe in this value of respect. So I respect anyone. We need people to cook for us. We need people to do security. We need people to drive us around. I see nothing wrong with them, and even if we think to the stage of leading, And we're all leaders, and I'm glad that we have this culture of leadership now developing, because what we're doing is showing everyone out there who's currently following what we do that leadership is a real option. You know, what is so special about me? What's so special about Clinton or anyone else around here? They must be able to see it as being a realistic option. You know, you went to the same school as me, he does the same volunteering work, he does the same job like me. So I think that is one of the great things that we are achieving. A lot of people are looking at us and say, you know, why not me? So I think that is that type of chain effect that we're going to continue to have. And something that I, you know, came to again discuss last week was the effect of young people, and it's always been like that if you look at the history books, where young people have to take the future into their own hands. You know, what do we want? Are we willing to take it? Are we really thinking that people are somewhere sitting, grooming us, waiting for the right time to hand it over to us? Young men and young women have always stand up and taken what they wanted, you know, and moved for better. Right? If people follow you, it's time, you know. So let us not fall into that trap of waiting, you know, someone is going to hand it to us. You know, and with the steps that we are taking are exactly what is needed to get the effects that were mentioned just now, of having the wider population kind of wake up. We might never get the 100%, but the ripples are magnifying themselves, and I think that we are in the right path. And with that, I'll take my leave. I'll be sure to watch the video online.
As you're going, Vishnu, and you were speaking, I thought of there's a very poignant video by it's Benjamin Zander, who's the conductor for the Boston Orchestra, and he actually uses, and I really had this notion before. He speaks about the orchestra and the different roles that the instruments play and that kind of thing. And the video is called The Art of the Possible. And it's usually shown and promoted within a notion of authentic leadership, which is to a certain degree what we've all been saying in different words. And it's the notion that we all lead from where we are. It doesn't matter what our position is, what role we play, we are leaders. And there are a series of testimonials and activities to build on that. But leadership is critical, and that everybody feels that they're a leader, and that there's something that they can do, that their hands aren't tied, and you know, there's nobody else saying that they can't, and that there's no longer that notion of the single leader that everybody follows. And Benjamin Zander actually has a very creative way of indicating what the role of the conductor is in an orchestra, where traditionally you might think that's the leader. But I've just advised you to look it up. It's about 20 minutes. It's not very long, and he talks about some of the characteristics that you need to look for when you're leading, and how you engage with people and see the sparkle in their eye to know that they're actually with you as opposed to not, and you know, a bunch of other. But it's all about human engagement. It's not the stuff that you kind of get where it's like, oh, I saw it on a piece of paper, or I made that plan in my head all by myself. It's about engaging with other human beings and building trust or strategic relationships. And I make the difference between the two. The ideal is that you would trust implicitly your partner, but it doesn't always happen, and sometimes you don't have the time, but you do have time to engage and find the points of synergy that will get you to where you need to get to in terms of your collaboration. And that's critical, and that's important in business as well. I mean, when you're trying to set up, you know, you may have the idea, and that may be all you have, to be honest. And to be honest with you, so I definitely need a couple of other people around me that can, you know, manage my books, be the customer service person, do my marketing, and so the kind of close to chest thing that I see with those few that are even speaking about being entrepreneurs, I think that has to loosen up. There has to be, and that's the risk taking, right? which I think is another thing. Very risk adverse, aren't we? Anyway, I want to hear from some other people. Okay, we're sort of halfway through here tonight and are a little over halfway. What did you expect out of this evening? Is there something else that you want to make sure gets discussed or questions you want to ask?
I actually want you to share your experience because we had a few members from BlueCAPS at the Consultation Forum. And I want you to actually share your experience, your take as an adult ally. You know, what you saw.
Observing the young people.
Yeah, and what you think are some areas of improvement, you know. It will help us, at least we'll know what to do in the future and how to, you know, conduct yourself.
Okay.
Can I ask one question before we go ahead? The initiatives that you spoke about, you said that sometimes obviously there was one group that was performing well, another one that wasn't performing, and people maybe suggested take back the funds from them. In those cases, what was the issue with the groups that weren't performing well? And what happened to fix it, or what did you do to try to?
There were different things. I can say, for example, one of the groups was a young women's group, and quite frankly, if I'm going to speak in stereotypical generalities, young women tend to always work well for other people, for family, for friends, and so on. But this initiative was specifically set up by them to say it's something that we want to do for us. So it wasn't moving because they continued to put a whole bunch of other things before the focus on the organization. It really was time and human sharing, like open, honest sharing about what it is that they were uncomfortable. The leadership in this one women's group, the one leader had mental health issues that we didn't discover until we started to push, right? And yeah, work wasn't getting done because she wasn't working at it, because she was avoiding it. And she actually needed the support of the work that one of the other groups was doing. So we actually connected them that way. So it wasn't a big embarrassing thing, but it was, here, you have a network of other young people who are going through the same kinds of issues, but they're dealing with them differently. So it's, again, being open and honest and straightforward and having safe spaces to have the conversation and not trying to, there is always judgment. It's human that we judge each other. We look and we say, okay, how come that one's doing well and that one's not? Or how come I have to do this and they don't have to do that? It was getting people into the same room and having everybody's truth come out and to realize that, it's not that they're slacking off. It's not like they're abusing funds. It's none of that. It's whatever it was. There were a couple of instances where the young people said, you know what, we have spent all the money that we want to spend. We've done what we wanted to do. Take the money back. So that happened too, once. But they were safe to do it without looking as though they were a failure, because they weren't. They were able to document and give the research and the outcomes, and this is what we set out to do. We did it. We didn't need all that money. It was the adult allies that told us we should ask for that money. We got that too. We said we needed $2,455.02. And they told us to ask for $10,000 because to round it off, and we didn't need it.
They could have closed with a big party.
Yes, but you see, and that's what everybody thinks. Those young people were more meticulous about money and structure and doing the right thing than anybody. The adults were the ones that were exactly saying, why don't you just throw a big party? Why don't you just do that? And they were like, no, we're not. This is what we set out to do. This is what we want to do.
Well, enlightening, and I think all of us would have learned something, and take away some. When we were in a room and we saw each other reflect and, try to focus and just, kind of like make our own path and see how we can work together as a team to get the job done.
That's important. One of the things, you probably don't want to hear this, but many, many years ago, just after the O.J. Simpson trial, Johnny Cochran came to Toronto. And it was one of those things where Does everybody know who Johnny Cochran is? The lawyer who defended O.J. Simpson in the murder of his wife. So you're too way too late. Yes, you must have quit. So on the one hand, Johnny Cochran is seen as, at that time, as a hero in the black community because he got O.J. Simpson off. But also, people just loved his, if the glove don't fit, you must have quit. His messaging and the way he handled that very explosive situation. And so he was coming, and the community, the African diasporic community and legal community were supposed to work together to host him, and he was going to do a bunch of different speaking engagements. And we fought, as a community, we fought every step of the way. We couldn't agree on where he would stay and who would host him and who would this. And we fought and we fought and we fought. And we didn't like each other. And people stopped, there's people who don't speak to each other today because of all of that. And it was so funny. The first night he came, he said, I want everybody just to come. I just want everybody to come together. And he said, I feel that we all put ourselves to the ringer for me to come here. And I just want to say to you that it's not worth it. I'm one person. You as a community have to stick together and work together. That's a problem that we have. We don't work. And he like literally gave us a fatherly Sunday lecture. And everybody was shocked because we thought we covered it very well. We gave him a nice little button, and and he said, "You've been fighting. I can tell. It doesn't get you anywhere. I'm not successful because I fought with people. You've got to be conciliatory. You must be a conciliator." And so that's what I want to say. I think it's easy to not to hate. It's easy to not want to get along. But it's almost like we need to make ourselves find those positive things. It's not hard. The one point, that's what I mean with the point of synergy that we can find with each and every person or group and work as a group. Because as long as we stay individual and in our little silos, individually we won't do well. And then collectively we won't do well. So we should really be that cooperative republic that we are supposed to be and practice some of that. And that's all I have to say. And just to say that we're the same everywhere, apparently. So don't beat yourself up. It's in our genes. We're hardwired to be that way, to follow the rules and be just so perfect and don't make a noise. And that's very Guyanese.
I think so.